Hello friends, let us study about the purpose of the screen designing. So what is the purpose? Why do we need about or what does we require for the screen designing? The first thing we studied about the design goal, now we would study about the purpose. So whenever a new thing what we decide to build up or to develop, we always think of the purpose. What is the purpose? Why I'm doing this? Or sometimes when you study, if you study some boring subject or some you're studying an interesting subject, you just go into the depth of that subject and you try to understand what is the purpose of this, why I'm reading this, and do you try to answer this question, why I'm reading this, what is the purpose of it? No, because we only study for this purpose of this is in our syllabus, in our curriculum, so we'll study this much. No, this is not done. So now, okay, this was the explanation. Now let us see about the first thing, the purpose. The purpose first is to know your user. The first thing about the purpose. When you build up a system, when you develop an interactive system, you should try to understand who are your users. Are your users the students or people who are senior ones or who will use or the young ones who could use it efficiently, or the one who say readers, the young readers or the senior readers, anything. For example, I'm developing an iterative system that is online library books for the children ages from 4 to 10 years. So what do I expect? I know my users would be 4 to 10 users, so I have to build my interactive system in such a way that they would understand what I am building it. So this is often stated as know your users. So how do you get to know your users? When you define the plan, like this, when you define constraint, that constraint is not a limitation, but that is this, it's only this. So 4 to 10 years students will only apply for the online library system or online books available or online toy, renting toy, for example. So that age, so 4 to 10 years age, you have to categorize what sort of toy will play by a 4 years and what sort of toy will play by a 7 years, because the age difference will create about and that capability and the thinking skill would develop between the 7 years and 4 years. Then, so how do we get to know? The first thing we'll ask is who are they? Do Who are they? As I told you, they are 4 to 10 years. So initially, the first thing to find out who are your users, who your users are, or the young, or whatever I've just mentioned earlier, whether they are newborn, whether they're senior, whether they're young, whether they are middle age of the middle 30, early 30, and so on. So as we saw about the, as I talk about the toy, renting a toy from the ages, so this question becomes harder to answer if you're designing a generic software such as the word process, or a simple problem arises with many websites where the potential visitors are far from homogeneous. So it's not probably not like you. So sometimes what happens is I whenever I browse a website, I found like, oh, this is something too juggling one or too jumbled one. I don't know what the developer or the website owner wants to say, what the product is one about. Okay, so generalize, whenever I type something, there would be a number of the solution that would pop up, but I'm confused. I was confused at that time to which one to click. So okay, that was a browse engine, I mean Google was the engine that it brought me all the information related to my search content. But later when I click one particular site related to my information, I found that it was completely jumbling, or it was misleading something else, what I thought the product about and what actually appeared to me. So always try that if the name says toy, that it should be related to toy, nothing else. Apart from toy, it should not be about the books and all. So whenever we develop, okay, that was a toy. Of course, for a toy, will not talk to young one what you want, but we'll just realize and we'll just think like them. So normally the question is like talk to them. talk to them, it is hard to get yourself inside someone else's head. Yes, if I'm developing a site, a rental site of a toy where all the toys should be present on the shelf, and what sort of toy could play or could be attractive from 4 to 10 ages is quite difficult, unless and until if I'm not experienced or I'm very new to this, I'm not able to do this. So this takes many forms. Right now, this can be, if I'm developing, okay, now come to the point where you are developing a website, you are developing an interactive system for user. So how will you do this? First you will take them structure interviews about their job or life, open-ended discussion, so that you will come to a point where how can you develop it, or what can you develop it. So you have to work on the context, work of context, the needs, the content, the text, and so on. So by being involved, user comes to own the design and becomes champion for it once deployed, because accordingly user has to build. It's not for me as a designer, I'm a building an interactive system. No, I'm building an interactive system. I'm building a interactive level of a machine to human, so that that human can access it, human can interact with the system through a light manner. People may able to tell you about the things really happen, not just how the organizations say they should happen. So to encourage user to tell you this, you need to win their trust. Once often the actual practices run counter to corporate policy. Then you have watch them. So watch them is, although people tell you this is the utmost important, it is not the whole story. This is a part of it. A professional, now listen, the professional in any field is practice and can do things in their domain, related to domain, but outside the domain that person is not able to do it unless it is an he or she is experienced on in that domain. Now an academic in the same field may not able to do these things, but she knows about the things in the domain work. So there are different kinds of knowledge and skills available with the people. Sometimes people own both, knows both, but not necessarily so. So because of this, it's important to watch people do as well as hear what they say. Now suppose, okay, let we finish about talking about the toy, what earlier three top points what we talked about. Now when I'm talking about an interactive system, building up for an organizations, okay, to the normal users, I mean common users. So I'm the one who is developing, like I'm a designer, I'm developing an interactive system, so I'm talking with an organizations, of a professional one, like what actually they want to do and how they would arrange, how the graphics should be made, and so on. So the person who is giving me the requirements and I'm the one who is collecting the requirements, we both have to think about the user who is going to use my, who is going to interact or interface my system. It is not I'm going to use it, it is my customer, I mean the organization or the firm customers or the users or the stakeholders who are going to access it. So accordingly I have to build up, so I should have the knowledge of the domain, how actually it works. But apart from that domain, if I work outside the domain, it will be quite difficult for me to understand what exactly this is about. Then the thing about the watch them. So watch them is, although what people tell you is important, but that is not the story. We have we have to be skilled in different levels, like both the domain. I mean, you should know the working of each and every domain, but this is not possible. So when you're working with in a graphics, like in a multimedia team, so you should understand how the multimedia works, what the multimedia is, the basic thing, the one of the base question. So sometimes it users can be involved in this. Now next is use your imagination. Sometimes we need require to use our imaginations, even if we would like to involve many users throughout our design exercise. This will not always be possible. See, it may be too costly, it may be hard to get time with them. Now, for example, I am building an interactive system for the hospital one, and they are the HRs in the related to that hospital, or the senior staff say is interacting with me that about the system, how it should be built, what are the forms, what are the uh, appearance, how the appearance of my website would be. But it will be too difficult for me to define it, because late in the lastly in the last it depends upon my imagination, my creativeness, how I put the thing. The the people who gives me requirement, the requirement manager of the hospital is provided me the requirement. Okay, we talk, we discuss in a structured manner, we had a talk, we had a long discussions, for example. Fine, but later on, ultimate, it is my imaginations, my creative to come up with that interactive system. So one method that has been quite successful is helping designing team produce user focused design is a persona. So a persona is a rich picture of an imaginary person who represents your user core group. So it may be too costly, it may be hard to get with them, but it will not be so difficult, because in the end you are developing for your user. So when a design solution is proposed, the team can ask, how would the doctor react to this? The detail is deliberately more than strictly necessary, but this is essential. So next we'll see about the navigation and the scenarios and lots of things about the screen designing elements. Till then, enjoy your purpose of the screen design.